Maria Carmen, a 96-year-old Spanish woman, surprised everyone when she called a police station and said that her emergency was hunger. Subscribe to the Special Stories channel. This story will surprise you and you will be moved and inspired. Watch it until the end to understand everything. What the officials did when they entered her house stopped all the news in Spain. On a normal day like any other in August, police officers Sergio and Mario began their shift at a police station in the city of Valencia. As they left their homes that morning, they had no idea that they would soon become famous throughout Spain and even beyond its borders. It was a very calm day in the department, and the officers were hardly receiving any calls that day. However, around lunchtime, they received a strange phone call asking for help. One might think that nothing could surprise experienced police officers, but the call was really unusual. The officers were faced with this for the first time in their entire career because, when they answered the phone, the voice on the other end said, "Hello, I know I may have called the wrong place, but I don't know who else to call. Could you help me? I'm very hungry, and it's been days since I've had a proper meal." Upon hearing this testimony, officers Sergio and Mario were surprised and looked at each other trying to find an answer. In several years of service, this was certainly the most unusual call they had ever received. They were used to dealing with thefts, disappearances, and robberies, but never anything like this. Regardless, the job of the police is always to help everyone who needs it, no matter where or in what way. We don't know how other police officers would have acted in their place, but Sergio simply said. In a matter of seconds, they were greeted by a thin and exhausted-looking woman who appeared to be over 90 years old. With a weak and calm voice, the woman delicately said, "Good afternoon, officers. My name is Maria Carmen. I apologize for calling for such a trivial reason, but I didn't know what else to do. I'm hungry, but I can't cook anything for myself because of my arm that hurts a lot after an accident I had," the elderly woman said. The woman was visibly tired and on the verge of tears. Her words shocked the men, who quickly entered the apartment and took action as quickly as possible. Mario went straight to the elderly woman's kitchen, opened the fridge, and couldn't believe what he saw. He could only find ice in all the shelves. At that very moment, Mario called Sergio to observe the situation, and his partner knew exactly what to do. In a nearly instantaneous manner, Sergio ran to the nearest store to buy food, while Mario stayed in the elderly woman's house and began working in the kitchen, washing the accumulated dishes and already separating the pots. Meanwhile, at the request of the officers, Maria Carmen was sitting on her sofa at home and watching a TV program. After leaving everything clean and organized, Mario then decided to talk to the woman while waiting for the food to arrive. The police officer sat on the sofa and, trying not to be too invasive or impolite, asked if he could ask a personal question to the elderly woman, who, despite feeling embarrassed, promptly responded with a yes. He asked, "Tell me, why do you live alone in this apartment? Do you not have any children or at least a caregiver?" Mario asked. The elderly woman simply sighed briefly and said, "In all my life, I never thought I would come to this point, but I think no matter how old we are, we always end up surprising ourselves in the end. Before, a janitor in the building named Ramon, who had a heart of gold, would help me. He would carry my bags when I came back from the market and even assist me with heavier daily tasks. Unfortunately, he had a personal problem with his daughter and has not been coming to work for several days now. Even though he called to let me know he would be away, I thought I would be fine on my own and could take care of myself. However, when I started cooking for myself again, I realized that the pain in my arm was unbearable." The police officer admired the strong woman but felt loneliness in her words. He then asked again if she had any children or close relatives, as he could try to contact them under the circumstances. Mrs. Maria Carmen said that she had a son who was already 34 years old, but he lived far away and she didn't want to bother him by calling and asking for help. So she decided to try to do everything by herself. He has his own life. I don't want to bother my son with something so silly. What would he think of me? Exclaimed the elderly woman. At that moment, the door opened and Officer Sergio returned from the supermarket with the groceries. He had bought all the food and seasonings with his own money and made sure that the woman had the best to eat. The food gave the refrigerator a new look, with all kinds of goodies, vegetables, and fruits that would certainly help the elderly woman for a few days. In this way, the two policemen started cooking, and in less than 40 minutes, everything was ready. They prepared a delicious spaghetti with tomato sauce, grated Parmesan cheese, and even took care to delicately add a basil leaf on top. The dish was so beautiful that it looked like it had been prepared by a real chef. After enjoying a pleasant meal, Officer Mario decided to call the woman's son and explain the situation his mother was going through. After all, he knew that if he were in his place, he would also like to be informed. The son ended up being kind and very understanding. He answered the call quickly, but said it would take him a while to get to his mother's house because he lived on the other side of Europe and would only be able to buy a train ticket the next day. While the son was on his way, the police officers decided not to leave the elderly woman alone. The next morning, before their shift at the station, they visited her and prepared a delicious breakfast, waking up 3 hours earlier to do so. It required a great effort and dedication from the officers, who could have simply ignored the woman because it was not their responsibility to deal with such a case. But as they themselves later said, one day we will all be old and may need help in the same way, as reported by Mario. Around lunchtime the next day, the woman's son arrived to take care of her. He hugged his mother tightly and cried, apologizing for not knowing what was happening and what she was going through. After that, he was even more moved and surprised by the actions of the police officers. He simply could not believe that two officers came to cook for a complete stranger, and even more surprising was that they used their own money to buy groceries and even cooked before going to work the next day, going far beyond what they had set out to do. He was shocked by the officers' care and kindness. When his mother told him which station the officers were from, he quickly went to the department where Sergio and Mario worked to thank them in person. The officers were happy to see that the woman's son was a good man. When the elderly woman began to tell them about her son, they were suspicious that he was irresponsible and had abandoned his mother on purpose to flee to another country. But in the end, it was clear that he was a good person and just needed to know what was happening with his mother. The young man felt that he had not shown his gratitude enough by simply thanking the two officers and decided to do something more. He wanted to change the officers' lives forever. He decided to post the whole story on a social media platform, and to his enormous surprise, in a few days, the story became viral throughout the country, and people praised the two officers and expressed their respect for the Spanish police once they learned about their actions. The officers were very grateful and responded to some of the comments. Sergio said that every police officer eventually finds themselves in an unconventional situation in their work, but people generally never find out since this type of action is not reported by traditional media. He added, "I don't think my partner and I acted heroically. We just acted kindly. We did what any of our battalion would do. It's not difficult to do good deeds, and people should cultivate that more," said Sergio. It was later discovered that the two partners had worked for the police for a long time, and during their service, they had proven to be responsible and respected workers by all their colleagues. Upon arriving at the station, After TV interviews and stories all over the place, the two officers were applauded by their colleagues, and Mario made a beautiful speech for everyone. In this difficult time of political disputes, epidemics, and economic difficulties, we as police officers must not only work responsibly but also help citizens who need our assistance and support. At that moment, my partner and I were only thinking of helping the elderly woman. We weren't thinking about popularity or recognition. A doctor saw the story and commented that considering Maria Carmen's age and the fact that she had not been eating properly for several days, it is possible that the police officers really saved her life. Maria Carmen's son also spoke to local journalists and said, "The world is not without kind people. I hope everyone does something kind for others, even if the actions do not bring benefits to themselves, just like these great officers did. They saved my mother's life, and for that, I will be eternally grateful to the police of Spain and officers Sergio and Mario." This simple story demonstrates that it is not difficult to be a hero. Sometimes, it just takes not being ambivalent about another person's problems or misfortunes. Even the most basic and simple act can have a positive impact on the world and even save lives. If you enjoyed this story, please share and like it, subscribe to our channel if you're not already a subscriber, and activate notifications so you don't miss any stories. Thank you for reading, and see you in the next story.